Welcome to my review of 1980X. And this game took around an hour and 20 minutes to beat again. I had beaten this on PS4 many years ago. This game's on multiple platforms. And here I'm playing on the Yuzu emulator, the Switch version. And this is a great game, a short game, but very good. It's almost like a demo of 5 different games, but really good demos. It shows that this developer really has a lot of talent, and they can probably make really good games in each one of the 5 different genres that this game covers. You'll notice that in this game, there are some story sequences that kind of hark back to the 80s arcade scene, with a little bit of a pixel art style to the story and general graphics, but each game type is done quite well. The only thing is that each game type is really short because, of course, the whole game is maybe only around 90 minutes or so. And it could take you a little longer if you're not as skilled at these kind of games, but it really doesn't present anything too hard compared to the games that it's inspired by. So it's kind of like just a much easier version of the games from that time, but it kind of gives you a taste of that flavor for each game. And it really fits that whole vibe really well, of that 1980s arcade vibe that it's going for. So that part of the game is also very cool. I was impressed with this game, though, just because normally you don't see a developer take on multiple genres of gameplay and do each one well. A lot of times when games do that, you'll have a little side section in a game, like Bayonetta 3, for example, that tries to imitate Elevator Action, which Elevator Action Returns was an awesome fucking game. And then when you see Bayonetta do it in the third game, that game had a lot of issues, but in Bayonetta 3, when you see them try to do these different genres, you can see they just did a shitty job, and it turned out to be a shitty sequence. It wasn't even good. So it is rare that even talented developers like Platinum don't even get that right. So it's a very hard thing to do. So here we have a Streets of Rage style beat 'em up that's pretty competent. It's pretty solid. Now, of course, none of these 5 games that are included in this, what you do is you go through like 5 different games basically, and that completes the entire game. It's part of the story, but none of them, have enough depth to them because they're so short. You know what I mean? Each one is like a little sample of a different type of game, so you never get that full experience with each game. But they go on long enough to get a nice little taste of each type of game. But like I said, it is a very short game, so keep that in mind. But for what it is, I thought it was really well executed. Even the beat 'em up section, it played pretty nice. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it would be a top tier beat 'em up or anything like that if it was a full beat 'em up game, but it's solid. It plays quite well. It shows that this developer has a lot of talent, and they could make full versions of any one of these 5 games, and they would be really good games. But here I'm just showing a little sampling of each of the different game types. You can see a little bit how the story is told with these cutscenes. It's all digitized, pixel type of art. You don't control these sequences, but it's just a little digitized presentation. It's done really well. So it should give you an idea of what to expect from the game. And I'm going to show each one of the different game types to give you a little idea of what's included in the game. This is a hard one to review and put a number rating on. That's why I'm not really huge into the whole number rating system, because when you just look at the numbers, you miss the context of the review, and it's also very hard to pick up on a vibe of a different game, or sometimes a game that may not have the best gameplay has other things that make it really enjoyable and memorable. So while I do use numbers for my reviews, I feel like it's best to look at the context of the review and what's said in the review, and look at the actual gameplay and stuff and see if it's something that appeals to you. And that's how I like to make my decision. I'll usually check a bunch of different videos and reviews on a game if I'm really interested, and just to get a general flavor of what the game is and try to form an idea. So here we have our next genre that's included, and this is a side-scrolling spaceship shooter style. And it's quite good. The only thing that doesn't make it better is that it's not long enough, you know what I mean? And that's to be said for all these different game types. Each one is actually quite well executed. The weakest one is probably the RPG style. It's like a dungeon crawler style. And it's a lot of fun in the context of this game, but that would be the least entertaining and more grindy one to make into a full game. I don't think there was enough there to make that into a full game. You know, of course, you can always make something into a full game, but I don't think that would be necessary for that. I don't think there's enough there to really to keep it interesting or strategic, you know. I mean, I fucking love strategy games and shit. Don't like the dungeon crawler style games that one was trying to imitate. I've never liked that style of game, but I just don't think that there's enough there for a full game. And I'll get into that a little bit more later, but this is a totally competent shooter style, you know, stage. I mean, it looks really good, plays great. The graphics actually remind me a lot of the Thunder Force games, but possibly even look better. The pixel art is fucking great. I mean, it's top tier for this kind of pixel art. I would have loved to see a full shooter in this style with this kind of gameplay. It would have been a great shooter. But what we get with each one of these type of games, like I said, is more like a sampler package. You know, you'll get to play maybe a few stages, a few areas in each one. And, you know, they really don't last long enough. So that is the main, if you want to call that a negative point, the main negatives are that it's a short overall package with not really much replay at all. And the dungeon crawling sequence near the end is the weakest of the 5 games. It really doesn't offer much, and it's not something you'd really want to replay. It's kind of cool the first time because, you know, it's a little grindy, but you're fucking around. You don't really know what to expect, so it's kind of enjoyable. It gives you that grindy kind of vibe that it's going for, but it wouldn't be very enjoyable to play over. There's very little to it. I mean, what this game kind of made me want to see is I would like to see this developer make full games in each one of these styles. Like, I would like to see if each one of these was a full game minus the dungeon crawling one. The driving one was cool too, but that was also maybe the second worst of the bunch. You know what I mean? I enjoyed them all though, but if I had to rank, you know, which ones were the best, I would say the driving is the second worst one. The worst one is the dungeon crawling one. Now, you're going to see some graphical oddities because on the emulator, parts of the road are invisible, which made it a little bit more challenging at certain parts, but it didn't affect my gameplay too much. But, yeah, I mean, the real game looks better than this. It doesn't have the invisible road, as you see here, where you can see the buildings underneath the road. That's not in the full game. It's just, it ran like that on the emulator, but there's also other Switch emulators and other settings I could have tried, but I didn't give a shit. I was just trying to beat the game. I go through a high volume of games, so if there's little visual oddities, I generally don't give a shit. I'll just beat it and go into the next game. But I thought this was a fun little driving game. This is one of the 5 games that you'll be playing. Each one is like a little demo, like I said, and this is a fun, enjoyable little drive, you know. It's kind of just like a fucking relaxed little drive, kind of fun. The narrator talks as you're driving. It's kind of like part of the story about the 80s and all this type of stuff. And me, I'm very, you know, very much not into story in games. I'm really into gameplay, so I kind of just let that shit pass by, and I don't really pay real close attention to those elements of the game. But I had fun just driving around. Just like a relaxed little drive. And you do have to try to get through it in a certain amount of time, but it's very easy. It's one of the easier of the 5 games that they include. So, very little skill involved to this, but it's kind of a fun driving little event. It goes on for a decent little while, for some minutes, but so now this was one of the best styles, and this reminded me of something like it's an auto runner, but it still reminds me of like games like Shinobi and Ninja Spirit, even though it plays quite a bit different, because you know in those games you're not constantly running the whole time. But it's a very competent little auto runner for a side scroller. I mean, you know, you're avoiding a lot of different obstacles, taking out specific enemies. You basically are just playing by trial and error. You find your path through the sections. And this was the hardest of all the games included. This one can be kind of challenging. Definitely not easy. It's a pretty good little challenge. All the other ones, you know, for me were pretty easy because I'm also used to I play through a lot of old fucking arcade games and you know retro stuff, as well as modern, but I played through very, very difficult games in this style. So, but this one gave me the most challenge. I had to retry some of the parts quite a few times on this little game here, because you know I had to kind of memorize the path, because you know you probably die a few times before you get it down. And there's a cool little boss fight within it all. This one was cool. I like this. This really reminded me a lot of Ninja Spirit. I really like the art style. I mean, like, if I could pick my favorite ones, I would want to have this into a full game and the shooter. But the beat 'em up is my third favorite, and that was quite fucking cool too. But, you know, it's not as good as like Final Vendetta that was recently made or the Streets of Rage games or anything, but with a little bit more polish and work put into it, a little depth added, it probably could be an awesome beat 'em up. You know, I would love to see them make a full game out of it, and just, you know, fucking beef it up a little bit. That's all. Just polish it more and, you know, add some more depth to the gameplay, more moves, enemy variety, and things like that. You know, and just make a full game. So now this is the last of the 5 games included, and this was the weakest one. But this is kind of just, in my mind, it's just kind of an enjoyable little climax to the game. It's kind of a relaxed little thing where, you know, you go through and you're not powerful enough, so you gotta go down multiple paths and level up before you get strong enough to go to the main path and take out one of the dragons. And you got to get strong enough to take out maybe 3 or 4 different dragons, and then that will pretty much get you to the last boss. And it's not hard at all. It's because basically the way it works is it's kind of like an educational segment in my mind. You know what I mean? It's kind of just trying to convey to you the idea of how old games, a lot of old RPGs weren't really skill-based. It was like you just fucking grind for a long time until your character gets strong enough to just fucking destroy shit. It's kind of like a grindy representation of that idea. You know what I mean? It's like presenting that idea to you in this kind of format. So it's kind of like you're gonna die several times, but you'll just keep coming back stronger, and eventually you'll be strong enough to go through and beat it. And there's really no skill involved or anything interesting. So, like I said, this was the least compelling of the 5 games, but I still thought it was cool. But it's the least replayable. I mean, it's the one I would least want to replay. Though I had fun because I didn't play the game for several years because I beat it on PS4, so this was kind of fresh again because I didn't really remember it that well. But, you know, this is the least entertaining little bit of the game. It is a hard game to review with a number rating, though, because the game is so short, but it's just, like, so high quality. But it's, like, high-quality demos of each of the 5 games, you know what I mean? So it's, like, how do I really review that into, like, a full review? And, you know what I mean? It's almost like a demo to me, but it is a full game, you know what I mean? I mean, there was a lot of games that were only an hour and a half long, a lot of old games, but they felt longer because they were based on one game style and, you know, one kind of theme. This is multi-genre, so it's, you know, when you have a multi-genre game like this, it feels kind of short in 90 minutes because you only have a few minutes on each of the 5 different. I mean, it's understandable, say you had, you know, 2 different game styles, then it feels like a full game, but when you split it into 5, it feels like a sampler package, you know what I mean? So maybe that's the only downside, but I mean, that's also part of the appeal. It's kind of a quick game that you can enjoy and just play through. And here they show little animations at the end here for each of the 5 different types of games. You know, you have a beat 'em up, a shooter, a dungeon crawler, a kind of oil runner, and a driver kind of game, you know, driving racing game. So overall, very cool game. And I'd probably base my review on the quality of the game. I'd probably give it an 8. I think it's really high quality, really well made. It's just that it's not fleshed out enough in each of the mini games, like I said. So decide for yourself if that's an issue, if that puts you off from it. Like I said, it feels more like a demo package, and it would be better if it was like if it was more fleshed out with each of the different game types. But as it stands, it's really strong for a short game, and it's a cheap game, so I think it's definitely worth checking out. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.